Welcome to Conflict News 24. Firstly, Israel-Gaza conflict last night at 11:30 local time. A ceasefire came into effect. The ceasefire is still holding. Question is, what did Israel gain from this operation? PIJ is also making some claims. And what did Hamas, the main group in Gaza, achieve, if anything, from this operation in which 44 civilian casualties have been confirmed so far? Secondly, China Taiwan tensions. On Sunday, Chinese military maneuvers around Taiwan were due to come to a close. But China has extended military drills around Taiwan. Today, Chinese Ministry of Defense spoke about extension in Chinese military drills in Taiwan. Question is now, can US somehow make China end these maneuvers? Otherwise, US allies in this region, Japan, South Korea, and others, how will they trust the United States of America? Very important question. And lastly, viewers, Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia is planning to establish a military base in Europe, in Serbia. Russian ambassador to Serbia spoke about likely establishment of a Russian military base in Europe. And secondly, viewers, some sources claim that Russia is planning to hold a referendum in Zaporizhzhia. Zaporizhzhia, eastern Ukrainian territory, around two-thirds of Zaporizhzhia is under Russian control. And now it is being said that Russia is planning to hold a referendum to annex Zaporizhzhia. Russia already annexed Crimea a few years ago. Most area of Donbass has also been retaken by Russians. Luhansk, Donetsk, almost entire Luhansk Oblast and large parts of Donetsk are under Russian control. But Zaporizhzhia was never contested between Russia and Ukraine, unlike Luhansk and Donetsk. If a referendum is held in Zaporizhzhia, we could see this war go on. This war will not come to a close. Now, a detailed look at this story. Firstly, Israel PIJ conflict. On Friday, Israel conducted a preemptive aerial operation. And on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Israel conducted scores of airstrikes on an armed group based in Gaza, PIJ, Palestine Islamic Jihad. In these air raids, 12 main commanders, 2 main commanders and 10 others, 12 fighters of this group have been killed. Main commander was Khalid Mansour, who was one of the first commanders killed. Before that, Taisar Jabari was killed, and 10 other PIJ commanders have been killed. Before this operation, Israeli forces arrested a PIJ commander, Basim al-Sadi, in West Bank. After that, this escalation started. Israel started preemptive airstrikes. There was no attack on Israel when Israel launched airstrikes on Friday. 44 casualties are being confirmed, including 12 PIJ fighters, and several killed are children and women too. A refugee camp in Jabalia was attacked as well. The two sides are accusing each other of the attack on Jabalia. 44 casualties and around 300 injured. How was the ceasefire announced? Egypt intervened. Egypt shares border with Gaza. Egyptian authorities, Egyptian representatives traveled to Gaza, to Israel, and then Last night at 11:30 p.m. local time, the two sides agreed to a ceasefire. So since then, ceasefire is holding. No rocket firing from Gaza on Israel. PIJ, other armed groups fired hundreds of rockets on Israel, but most of the rockets were intercepted by Israeli Iron Dome defense system. So no casualties, no one injured in Israel, though hundreds of rockets were fired and some missiles as well. At least one video showing a missile fire has been shared by an armed group. So hundreds of rockets, a missile were fired from Gaza, but Israel has this tremendous defense capability when it comes to stopping rocket attacks. And then main armed faction in Gaza, Hamas, was out of this escalation. Had Hamas been part of this escalation, it could have been a bit difficult for Israel to stop all these rocket attacks, because last year we know that Hamas fired more than 3,000 rockets into Israeli territories. But this time, Israeli forces, Israeli civilians, no losses, no one injured, no one killed in Israel, but 44 killed in Gaza. Egypt intervened. PIJ was calling for the release of its commanders in custody in Israel. Two commanders, Khalil Awada and Bassam al-Sadi. According to Egypt, Israel has agreed that decision will be made regarding the release of these two PIJ commanders. Israel has not confirmed that. So what did Israel gain from this operation? Yes, Israel gained a lot. Israel has weakened PIJ. PIJ armed group in Gaza has been considerably weakened. Its rocket launch sites have been destroyed. Its 12 fighters, 2 leaders have been killed, and 2 leaders are in custody. Hamas, the other armed groups, did not take part in this escalation. So Hamas is emerging stronger because other armed group PIJ has become weak. Israel has achieved its objectives at the cost of civilians killed, 44 killed. Most of the killed are civilians. Several buildings in Gaza were destroyed. So far, there is ceasefire. But this is a temporary ceasefire. There is no permanent solution inside to Israel-Palestine, Israel-Gaza conflict. That is why after a few months we see this escalation in which civilians die mostly. And most who die are Palestinians because Israel has defensive capabilities and that is how it manages to defend from attacks. So mostly Palestinian civilians are killed in these escalations. No solution in sight. Temporary ceasefire is holding so far. China has extended its military drills around Taiwan. Life came to a standstill in Taiwan after China encircled Taiwan in 6 locations around Taiwan. China launched its military maneuvers. The maneuvers were announced after Nancy Pelosi, US House Speaker, visited Taiwan. Despite threats from China, Nancy Pelosi pressed ahead with the visit. She visited Taiwan. Immediately after that, Taiwan came under siege. Chinese military launched the drills, 4-day drills. And yesterday, the drills were about to end. They were due to end. But today, China has announced the extension of these military maneuvers. In recent hours, we have heard that some Chinese ships have been seen to the east of Taiwan. Chinese and Taiwanese ships are sailing very close. Dangerous situation. Yesterday, Taiwan lifted restrictions on flights because during the 4-day Chinese maneuvers, Taiwan had to suspend flight operations. Most of international flights were cancelled to Taipei, and it was being hoped that China would end maneuvers on Sunday. That is why Taiwanese authorities lifted restrictions on flight operations, but China has announced to extend military operations. not military operations, but military maneuvers. So China is keeping Taiwan under pressure. It wants this situation of uncertainty to continue, which will have a serious impact on Taiwanese economy. Taiwanese imports, exports, all suspended because of this sort of blockade. And interestingly, this time China has not issued any NOTAM, any navigational announcement. Where will these extended maneuvers be conducted? How long will the maneuvers be conducted? No announcement. Only China says that it has extended its military maneuvers. So, another move from China which will create tensions in the region. Question is, what will the US do now? US allies in the region are looking towards the US, that it should play its role in stopping these military maneuvers around Taiwan. Taiwan is under siege. Other US allies in the region, Japan, South Korea, could be targeted by China in the same fashion. So these countries are now looking toward the US. What will US do? If US is unable to stop China from continuing these military maneuvers, it means that US allies in the region could change their mind as well. US has its presence in the region. Thousands of US troops are based in Japan, viewers. And these Chinese maneuvers are focusing on eastern part of Taiwan to cut off any movement of reinforcements for Taiwan from eastern side, from Japan side. So now it's a test of US global influence, US diplomacy. Can US stop China from continuing these military maneuvers around Taiwan? That remains to be seen. Taiwan is going through a difficult time. Its economy will be seriously disturbed. China will keep Taiwan under pressure, it seems. Lastly, was Russia-Ukraine conflict. Three very important developments. Russia is going to establish, it's planning to establish a military base in Europe, in Serbia. Serbia is a Russian ally, and Russian ambassador to Serbia a few hours ago spoke about a likely Russian base in Serbia, which could be a matter of concern for entire Europe, for EU. Russia has its military bases mainly in breakaway states which were part of ex-Soviet Union ones like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. In Armenia as well, Russia has a base, but in Central Europe, in Central Europe, Russia has no military base. Now Russia is planning a military base there. If it happens, it could have some serious repercussions. EU, which is already imposing sanctions on Russia, it will have to move towards joint defensive strategies to counter Russia, it seems. And secondly, from Ukraine, where Russia is reportedly planning to hold a referendum in Zaporizhzhia. Zaporizhzhia Oblast is not contested territory between Russia and Ukraine. Like Luhansk, Donetsk have been contested for years, eastern part of Ukraine. But Zaporizhzhia was never contested, and Zaporizhzhia, around 2/3 of Zaporizhzhia is under Russian control. Nuclear power plant, Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Enerhodar, called Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, it is also under Russian control. Now Russia is reportedly planning to organize a referendum here. Do the people of Zaporizhzhia want to be part of Ukraine or Russia? Do they want to be part of Ukraine, or do they want to be part of some independent setup? Speculations are going around that such a referendum could be held. If such a referendum is held, it could be an indication that this war will go on. We know that Russia, Ukraine have been involved for years in the dispute over Luhansk and Donetsk, and Crimea, already annexed by Russia several years ago. If Zaporizhzhia is annexed by Russia, or if it becomes part of Donetsk, it shares border with Donetsk, it could be another blow to the hopes that this war could come to an end soon. Not officially announced, but it is being claimed by some sources that Russia is considering holding of a referendum in Zaporizhzhia. Meanwhile, both sides are accusing each other of attacks on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The power plant came under Russian control, I think, in March. In February, this war started. In March, I think Russians took control of Zaporizhzhia. So Russians are there. But the plant is being run by Ukrainian technicians. And both sides are accusing each other. A few hours ago, in a daily press briefing, Russian Ministry of Defense said that some shells were fired on electricity transmission lines which transmit electricity to this Zaporizhzhia power plant. And Ukraine, on the other hand, is accusing Russia that Russia is creating problems. It could lead to a nuclear disaster because of Russian attacks on Enerhodar. Why would Russia attack this nuclear power plant? Russians are already in control of this plant, and they're there. There are forces deployed there. So why would they attack it? It's difficult to understand. But Ukraine and Ukrainian allies, they claim that Russia is behind the attacks on this plant. So overall, it's an alarming situation. Whoever is attacking this power plant, but if there is radioactive emission from this plant, it could lead to serious consequences for the entire region. Thank you for watching.